All right, let's get right into it. You got a mysterious death in Dhaka, a summit with two of the world's most powerful leaders, and whispers of a clandestine plot. It really does sound like it's ripped straight from a spy novel, but this story was everywhere back in 2025. Today, we are unpacking the so-called Dhaka plot. And this was the image at the very heart of it all. The story of Vladimir Putin leaning over to Narendra Modi, insisting for his own safety that he ride in his armored presidential car. This one moment, this single act, what people started calling Putin's lift, took a murky intelligence rumor and just lit a fire under it, turning it into a viral sensation. It became this powerful symbol of an alliance standing strong against some kind of invisible threat. So, what was the story, really? What were the actual allegations? Let's break down the claims and the key players in this whole conspiracy that, for all the noise it made, was met with complete and utter official silence. And it all unfolded really fast. Early in 2025, you start hearing whispers about extra-tight security for Prime Minister Modi's upcoming travels. Then, boom, mid-October, a U.S. official, a guy named Terrence Jackson, turns up dead in Bangladesh under very, very mysterious circumstances. And almost overnight, media outlets in India and elsewhere start connecting the dots. Claiming his death was no accident, it was tied to a foiled plot against Modi. And of course, that's when the Putin's lift story just explodes online.
So the nuts and bolts of the story were this. The CIA, or someone linked to them, was supposedly planning something. But, and this is the key part of the narrative, India's RAW and Russia's SVR and this great display of quiet competence worked together and shut it all down. Jackson's death? Well, that was just part of the fallout. Now here's the giant catch. There was not one single official word about this. Not from New Delhi, not from Moscow, and certainly not from Washington. And while this story was blowing up in some circles, most major Western media outlets just shrugged and ignored it as totally unverified.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Is it just another wild internet conspiracy theory, a piece of modern geopolitical fanfiction? Maybe. But before we just write it off completely, we kind of have to ask a different question. Is there anything in history that suggests this kind of thing is, well, possible? Let's take a step back from today's unproven headlines and look at yesterday's declassified files. We're now going into the archives. Everything from here on out is documented, declassified, and in some cases officially acknowledged. Think of this as a quick highlight reel of the CIA's greatest, shall we say, global interventions. First stop, Iran, 1953. Here we have the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. He made the critical mistake of thinking that Iran's oil should probably belong to Iran. As you can imagine, the West disagreed. And the result of that disagreement was Operation Ajax. This was a co-production between the CIA and Britain's MI6 that straight up engineered a coup. Mossadegh was tossed out, the Shah was installed, and Western oil interests were safe once again. And we know this is true because the CIA's own files on the operation were finally declassified in 2013. That little checkmark, it means this one is case closed. Okay, let's jump over to the Congo in 1961. This time, the game was a little different. It wasn't just about overthrowing a leader. It was about getting rid of him. Permanently. The target was Patrice Lumumba, the Congo's very first prime minister. Now, declassified records, we're talking minutes from National Security Council meetings, they show that top U.S. officials authorized a plan to, and I'm quoting here, eliminate Lumumba. They even sent a poison tit to the CIA station chief in the country. Now, in the end, he was killed by his local rivals, but there is absolutely no doubt that U.S. policy directly created the environment for his murder. This one is also firmly on the official record. And now we have to talk about the agency's most, let's call it their most persistent passion project. For decades, it seems like one man took up an awful lot of space in the CIA's collective imagination. Fidel Castro. Over 600. Let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated number of times they tried to assassinate him. I mean, the list is just absurd. We're talking poisoned cigars, exploding seashells, a wetsuit dusted with a deadly fungus. It reads like a bad spy comedy, and yet it's all documented. The man was apparently just very, very hard to kill. All right, next up, Chile, 1973. And you might be sensing a pattern here. We have another democratically elected leader, Salvador Allende, whose politics were just not the right flavor for Washington during the Cold War. So here, the playbook was a little different. It wasn't a direct hit. It was a full-on campaign of destabilization. The Nixon administration flooded the country with money and propaganda to support opposition groups, basically to create total chaos. It was all about paving the way for General Pinochet's military coup. Allende died inside the presidential palace as it was being bombed. And again, the US role in setting the stage for that coup is fully documented. Now let's fast forward all the way to the modern era. We're back in Iran, but the year is 2020. And believe me, the methods have changed. A lot. Yeah, this wasn't some covert plot with exploding seashells. This was a direct, publicly announced U.S. drone strike that took out a top Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani, right at the Baghdad airport. There was no plausible deniability, no shadow games. This was a publicly claimed kill justified as a counter-terrorism operation. It's a whole new playbook. So, when you lay all these cases out side by side, a pretty clear pattern starts to emerge, right? The tools change, the justifications change, but the core objective, that often stays exactly the same. Let's try and put it all together. This table really spells out the evolution, doesn't it? You start with the classic covert coup, like in Iran. Then you've got the direct, even if they were comically bad, assassination plots against people like Castro. Then there's the strategy of using proxy forces to do the dirty work, like we saw in the Congo. And finally, you get to the modern method. Just launch a missile and put out a press release. It's a pretty extensive toolkit. Okay, so with all that documented, declassified history as our backdrop, let's finally circle all the way back to where we started, the alleged Dhaka plot of 2025. How does it measure up against the real thing? And this right here, this is the whole ballgame. On the left side, for all those historical cases, you have a literal mountain of proof. Declassified CIA files, congressional investigations, White House memos, official admissions. And on the right side, for the Dhaka plot, you have media reports from a few specific outlets and a whole lot of online speculation. The difference isn't small, it is everything. One is proven history. The other is a powerful story, but it remains an unproven allegation. Which brings us to the real point here. Whether the Dhaka plot actually happened or not, the story of the plot absolutely served a purpose. It became a perfect example of what experts call strategic narrative warfare. It's all about using stories to shape how people see the world, to reinforce alliances, like that powerful image of India and Russia, and to paint rivals as the bad guys. And you can do it all without a single piece of hard evidence. In this game, the narrative is the weapon. And that really leaves us with a million-dollar question, doesn't it? In this age where we are just drowning in information and disinformation, where a really good story can circle the globe 1,000 times before the truth even gets its shoes on, how are we supposed to tell the difference? How do we separate a strategic story that's designed to influence us from the proven, documented history that can actually inform us? That, right there, is the challenge for all of us now.